Hello there, CEOs, business owners, entrepreneurs. If you have been at a place in your business where you're like, should I share this with my team or should I not share this? Or you're even thinking, what if I do share this? What is going to happen next? Am I exposing too much or too little? You want to listen in for the next few minutes. I do have an awesome expert in this area, being vulnerable. We are talking about being vulnerable. And I'm sure there are times you have been vulnerable. We all have been vulnerable. And, just thinking about how it just impacts our business, our relationships, it's just very, very important. So, Maleda, thank you so much for joining us. I do have Maleda Corpus with us. If I'm not pronouncing your
Thank
name
you.
wrong, I think I got it.
Thank
And
you.
she is an awesome expert. We met last year and then we connected again, and I was just intrigued by what she does because when you think of it, we need to be vulnerable or not too vulnerable as we're, maneuvering business relationships, our clients,
Mhm.
contracts, negotiation, our team. It's never ending. So thank you so
Yes.
much again, Melita, for being with us. And I do appreciate you sharing with us for the next few minutes. So if you do have any questions, guys, please remember to share them in the chat. Feel free to comment and also do remember to share this broadcast. We're a community and you never know who might just benefit from listening in today. So thank you again, Melita, for being here. So
Thank you.
first of all, I want you to dive into what is it when we talk about being vulnerable. I'm sure there are a few explanations or views,
Yeah.
opinions, but let's kind of start there. What does it mean to be vulnerable?
Geez, I don't even know where to start because when people talk about vulnerability, and I actually just did a podcast on this
Mm-hmm.
on male vulnerability. I had Andre Lamb, a
Oh, yeah, Andre,
yeah,
yeah, I've met him.
yeah, and we talked about vulnerability, especially in the male spectrum, right? Because that's usually a big no-no, right?
Yeah.
It's you're being too soft, right? And but what we've learned through my conversation with him is that actually being vulnerable is actually a power because I mean, we've seen it through so many effects, thinking of mental health, especially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did mention that I had watched a CBC documentary. I think it's called Digging in the Dirt. And
Mm-hmm.
the documentary was about mental health in the workplace, not in the workplace, well, workplace, specifically the oil field workplace.
Okay.
And that's a very male dominated industry, and what we've seen there is a lot of the men being failed in terms of the mental health, and the results were suicide, drinking, and drugs. And so they're starting to turn that around now and realizing that the male stigma, and it can be every stigma, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
as an Asian, in the Asian culture, we're taught to hold back our feelings. um so anyways, going back to what vulnerability is, it's inevitable. It's it's a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless, you can't even, people can try to fight it, but it's going to come back to you in the worst ways possible. and
Mm-hmm.
then and then that vulnerability, if you're not showing it, will actually affect all the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I think of vulnerability is there's like the evil and the good, right? So the evil is if you are too vulnerable, um, it might not be a good thing, right? And you got to think about who you're actually being vulnerable with, so it can hold your growth. If you can hold back
Mm-hmm.
your growth, you can hold back fulfillment, but it can also, on the good side, open doors, right? For
Okay.
better relationships, deeper connection. And that's where my business comes in, is to create those deeper connections, deeper fulfillment. And so, yeah, when it comes to vulnerability, you can't get away from it.
Okay. So it's basically where you are sharing or exposing those deep parts of yourself, probably your journey
Yeah.
and even parts of your business as well. They might be, because I
Yeah.
know for sure, like some persons, especially when you're struggling in business, it's not something to easily share because it comes with, being vulnerable does come with that guilt, overwhelm, come
Yeah.
with so many other
Yeah.
emotions. So
Yeah.
I know it can really be sticky. And when I think of it, a part of my culture growing up, being vulnerable did indicate that you were weak. So it's not like,
Right.
we
Mm-hmm.
would easily share what's
Yeah.
happening, or we feel that, okay, this person doesn't need to know this. It's
Yeah.
me. And we try to, separate parts of ourselves somewhat. So that's what
Yeah.
I see sometimes in the whole realm of being vulnerable. Like there's
Yeah.
so many different parts to it. So
Yeah.
another thing I have is I want us to talk a little bit too
Mm-hmm.
on, as the as a CEO, the entrepreneur, the business owner, what are some guidelines with being vulnerable? Because I know when we think about, you know, persons will say your personal life is separate from your business. So if
Yeah.
I'm, for example, going through a sickness or so,
Mm-hmm.
it's personal. I shouldn't be
Yeah.
obligated to share. So what are
Yeah.
some guidelines with what do you share and what do you not share?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned this because I think it was either you or someone else. We had a discussion about this last week at the Edmonton Business Association networking event,
Mm-hmm.
right? We were talking about how we were talking about vulnerability actually.
Mm-hmm.
um I actually want to share my experience, especially as an entrepreneur in this last year, uh
Mm-hmm.
with vulnerability. I always fought with the idea of I gotta present myself to the public as this happy, strong, independent entrepreneur, female entrepreneur. And and even going through, because it's a roller coaster ride, as we know, you
Yeah.
know, I've gone through the ups, and when they're great, gosh, I just want to announce it to the world, right?
Yeah.
But I've had some dark days, and there was actually a period last year where I stepped back from social media because as an entrepreneur, you're now a public figure.
Yeah.
So you have to actually be careful how you present yourself. And so in my mind, that vulnerability factor came into play, thinking, okay, I got to step back. I don't want people to know that I'm going through this difficult period with this business.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if it was you or one of the ladies that we were with had pointed out that you know being vulnerable is very human, right? It's a very human characteristic. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of a lot of people now, your audience now, especially on social media, they want to see that human factor of a business, right?
Yes.
That is how you start to connect with people. So to me, being vulnerable in the workplace or in business is so important, especially now. If you want to, like, for me, I'm an empath. I only want to connect, especially with collaborations or vendors or people who I want to do business with. I want to connect with people who see me as a human, not as a dollar sign or a number, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, going back to that, that was my experience. Stepping back and realizing that, what, I'm human, so
Mm-hmm.
is everyone on this planet. And I decided when I came back from my little hiatus or my little break that I am going to, first of all, not be the person that I think the public wants to see, right?
Yes.
I am going to be me,
Mm-hmm.
finally. And
Yes.
that's another aspect of vulnerability, is actually being yourself. So I decided when I came back out of my little hole that I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna be who I am, all my faults, all my
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, all my errors. I'm just gonna be human. And so that's my example. But in terms of, kind of steps or processes that you can take, and this is just from my experience, when you are going to be vulnerable, whether it be in the workplace or personal, I think, first of all, you need to know who you can be vulnerable with, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're working, in a department, you're going to know who you're close to and who you can confide in and share, some intimate details about your life or etc. So you just make sure you know where your safe spaces are, right?
Mm-hmm.
That goes for some people don't. I've had people who just tell me their life story. I was actually at a store the other day, and I felt kind of bad. At me being the listener, I was compassionate.
Yes.
She was in this store and she'd been there, and I could tell she was lonely. She'd been there all day. And her companion in the store was this dog, really quiet dog, but it had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so we walked in, and while my son was buying whatever he needed to buy, she felt comfortable with me, maybe I gave
Yeah.
that energy. I gave that welcoming space as soon as I walked through the door. But she started talking about how her dog passed away, and all I did was just listen. So there you go.
Just
So
listening. Yes.
yeah. So it's important, and even if you're a leader, in the workplace, it's very important that as a leader, you are the example.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to create that example of making your subordinates, your people, that your colleagues, your coworkers. You have to set that example that you feel, you're welcoming to all the people that you work with, right? So make sure you know where your safe spaces are. So that's one of the steps, or one of the
Mm-hmm.
processes. And then we go back to the vulnerability, your safe space. Some people don't know where when to, not overshare, give too
Yeah.
much information. So for example, you could say, um instead of spilling out, oh, I'm having a divorce from my wife, I'm really, I'm F her, and I can't stand what she's doing now, and going into great detail, just kind of say, I'm going through some challenges at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to share, too much, but I just want to let you know I'm I'm going to be stepping back for a bit, or, just little details. They don't need to know. And I know people are going to pry, but
Yeah.
you gotta maintain some professionalism, right? When you're sharing information, especially in the workplace and business. So, and then going back to who are your safe spaces, open
Mm-hmm.
up to them with that too much information, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the second kind of process. And then the other, and I think this is very important, because
Mm-hmm.
me as being a listener, I'm very particular about communication. So
Yeah.
it's important to have open communication when it comes to being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So what you don't want to do, especially when you're telling people, okay, going through some challenges, you don't want to make assumptions when someone's in that position, that vulnerable position, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and then it's so important when you're vulnerable to know when you need to ask for help when you're struggling. You know,
Exactly.
going back to that safe space, who can you go to for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three things that I would recommend and keep and consider. And a lot of this too would be, some of them would be habits that you have to learn, right? Because someone
Exactly.
who has to learn to be vulnerable at work, these are things that you can, tools that can help you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. Because to be honest, even mentioning divorce, I remember there was a leader and they on LinkedIn, and they waited until the divorce was complete, and then they shared. They said, I've been out of touch, I've not
Yeah,
been on,
right.
and
Yeah.
this is what's
Mhm.
happened. Because to be honest, it's like, depending on how vulnerable you are gonna
Mhm.
be, or what you're being vulnerable about, you're
Yeah.
basically exposing parts of yourself. You don't know
Yeah.
what the reaction might be. Will they
Y-
still want the contract? Will they,
Yes.
think
Yeah.
I'm not a good business leader? Will my team lose trust in me? There's so many
Yeah.
things like that snowball impact that can happen after being
Mhm.
vulnerable. Another thing I just want us to focus on as well is the importance of listening as someone in your circle is being vulnerable, whether it be a client, whether it be a team member, or even a
Yeah.
colleague, as business leaders, CEOs, and so forth. How important is it to really or how can you improve your listening in those circumstances? They're being vulnerable. How can you
Yeah.
really improve listening so that, key things are not missed as this person is being vulnerable to you?
Oh my gosh, this is my favorite subject.
I see like light bulbs. Yeah,
I
I see
light
like
up when you say, how can I learn to
like kids
listen?
getting
Well, let
excited
me
over
tell you.
new toys.
So
Yeah.
I teach a class on how to listen to be successful in your business, and these kind of techniques or skills that are part of the listening sphere can actually be used throughout every aspect of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that most important for me is, going back to my history and working in the workplace is um I think for me, and this is why I kind of set on the path of being an entrepreneur, especially to do with listening, is the way you properly listen, especially as a leader in an organization, is you have to, there's no power, there's no status when
Yeah.
you're listening properly, right? There's
Mm.
listening, and then there's active listening, which
Oh,
is
okay.
a totally different, type of listening. And
Mm.
so it's important to know that when you are actually listening, especially with someone who's vulnerable, you got to go down to their, I don't want to say down to their level, because there is no
Mm-hmm.
level. It's just an even playing field, right? You
Yes.
guys, you're both equal. And that is the reason why I love listening, because I'm not one who likes to compete. I'm not one who likes to, I'm not a power tripper, and
Yeah.
a lot of leaders in my experience are love controllers, and that status thing is such a big thing to them, but they have to realize they're not anywhere ahead in relationships, because those connections aren't that great,
Mm-hmm.
it almost it I call it like the Hitler factor, right? Because when you
Yes.
start taking yourself up that high and you don't know what the other people in the organization are actually doing, or you care about them, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you turn into Hitler to me anyway.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that reality show? It's called Undercover Boss.
Yes. Yes, I saw it. Yes.
Yeah. There's a reason why I love that show,
Mm-hmm.
because they take these leaders and they actually become human again, and they go
Yeah.
down to the level of these. And so yeah, I can go on about that. But anyway,
Yeah.
so we're talking about power and status. That's taken away when you're, as a leader, listening properly, you know.
Mm.
And from my experience, that's never happened, right? I was always a number. I was always a lower status,
Mm-hmm.
never anything like that. So that's probably one of the important things, is getting down to the person that you're listening to, the one that's speaking. Get down to their, not get down. I got to stop using that.
Yeah, I
Get
understand. Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't mean
get
it
to
in a
their place,
derogatory way.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the next thing you would do is you got to show, especially, if it's not over the phone, it's a lot easier if it's in person or even virtual, because you can see me interacting with you. Like right
Yeah.
now, I know you're listening to me because your eyes are focused on me,
Yeah.
and that is the best, indication that the person is actually listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all these non-verbal gestures, right? uh
Mm-hmm.
so what I do myself, so the person knows I'm listening, is I lean in, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Like
right?
getting in. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And you're gonna laugh at this, but I find, because sometimes when you have all your senses working into play, you're not really focused on listening. So if I have my eyes open, yes, I can see you, but if I really really want to listen to the words that you're saying, I've actually closed my eyes so that I can focus on. I'll close my eyes and i'll
Mm.
i'll do this. Okay, I got your words, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's another important thing. And then the next one would be is asking questions. So, for example, in my sessions with my clients, I do 10% of the talking. They do 90% of the talking,
Mm.
and the 10% with me is actually, so can you tell me more about what's going on with you? Asking those questions. And
Yeah.
so that's, just kind of showing the client that you're actually paying attention to every single word they are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing would be is making sure that when you are listening, there's no distractions.
Oh
That's a big
yeah,
one,
because
right?
yeah, so easily distracted. We can
And
be.
especially now in this day and age with social media,
Oh yeah.
electronics, right? Our kids, our children, my goodness, video games. Like, it's
Yeah,
like,
and even just thoughts like You're in a
Yeah.
conversation, you're thinking, okay, did I finish this report? I need
Yeah.
to do this order, or what
Yep.
did I complete
Yep.
everything today? What's for
Yeah.
dinner? So many
Yeah.
thoughts. We have
Yeah.
thousands of thoughts a day, right?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
flooding through our minds. So yeah,
And that's a very good point, because that listener or that speaker won't even know that you're thinking those thoughts. So how do we actually know that we're actually paying attention? Well, that's where
exactly.
we come to the part of reverberating back to what they said, rephrasing what they said. So they spoke of, you know their story. And what you want to make sure is when you ask the questions, that you got all the information coming into you, and then you would
Mhm.
repeat back what you interpreted that person to say. And
Yeah.
then that's a good opportunity to make corrections, like, no, actually, I didn't mean that, this is what I meant, right?
Hmm.
So those kind of skills, or those kind of techniques, are very important when it comes to listening, especially as a leader, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the work you do in terms of supporting, leaders and so, because, you know, as we do know listening impacts every
Yeah.
aspect of business, contract negotiation, handling
Yeah.
disputes,
Hmm.
relationship with your clients,
Yeah.
so many things. So let's just talk a little bit about the listening that you do. Just how vast is it, or
Okay.
why is it? I mean, we spoke about the importance of it, but
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit more on, you know, why we really need to listen well.
Right. Yeah. So statistics have shown, data has shown that about 2% of this whole planet of humans are actually properly trained or formally trained in knowing how to be better listeners.
Mhm.
That's a very small percentage. So I'm on the mission. And even from my experience, I know people don't listen very well. I'm guilty of it
Yeah.
too, right? It's a
Yes.
work in it's a work in progress for me, and I'll be continuing for the rest of my life on how to be a better listener.
Hmm.
Um, so that's why I say, even though I teach people or educate people on how to be better listeners, I want to practice what I preach, right?
Yes.
I can't, it doesn't feel authentic or real to me that if I just tell you what to do, I'm not doing it myself, right?
Yes.
Especially with my children. My son has, and I'm still, he's a teenager, so I've learned in the past. He said a couple times, "Mom, you're not listening to me." And when he says that, I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm the listener. What? I'm not listening to my son. Okay, I better I better turn around
Yeah,
and
I
figure this
get that
out."
too from my boys too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, we've developed a great relationship now, because I've practiced, right? But
Yeah.
in terms of educating people, that's something that's very important to me. I'm very passionate about it. Is just like right now, I'm actually teaching classes on how to be better listeners and to be successful in your business. So I teach some entrepreneurs or would be entrepreneurs on how they can be better listeners, so that that their relationships with their clients are maintained, and within the organization, how relationships could be better fostered, right?
Okay. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And do share where persons can reach out to you. I know some persons might even place all your contacts in the chat, or if there are some who are
Oh yeah.
listeners, they like to hear.
Yeah, and I'm easily searchable now. Apparently, you can find me on Google search on the front page, which
Yeah.
wasn't like that 6 months ago. So yeah, it's I Listen. You can even type in my social medias at I Listen Canada. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and my YouTube channel is at I Listen Canada. So yeah, you can find me now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melita. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure. And if you do have more questions, guys, please reach out to her directly. Her information will be in the chat as well. She'll place that and how you can connect with her. And do share this out with other CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners. It is quite important that we really adopt these principles of listening and learn
Mhm.
to listen better, learn to listen well. It's always about growth, because the more we listen well, the more we can be vulnerable
Yeah.
in safer ways, and
Yeah.
also just improve so many areas in your business will be improved if you do listen well and if you understand, being vulnerable and so forth. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, if you do have any questions, reach out to Meleda. Do you have anything else to say before we say
Yes,
goodbye to our
actually.
listeners? Yes,
So
thank you.
I want to share a quote by Brené Brown. She's the guru of vulnerability, actually.
Okay.
And this quote I thought was very poignant because, people forget how it's just part of our life. She said, vulnerability is the core, the heart, the center of meaningful human experiences. So
Wow.
remember that, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because to be honest, when you think about it, being vulnerable is just sharing more of who we are, right? It just boils
Absolutely.
down to that, sharing more
Yeah.
of who we are with others. So thank you so much again, Melida. I really do
Thank you.
appreciate it. And
Thank you. Thank you.
and yeah,
I look
so
forward to our podcast.
yes, I'm excited for that too. So guys, we
Thank
will
you.
be signing off in 3, 2, 1. Bye everyone.